Recording is in progress, so we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining Marie Pinney and myself to this first series in a series what we've titled Equipped for the Journey. This first episode is going to be specifically about just knowing your child, because before we get into the specifics of, different dynamics with different kids, whether they're giftings, whether they're challenges, or whether it's just a particular trajectory that our kids are on. Before we can get into details of that, we just want to lay this groundwork first of knowing your child. And the reason for this series, so Marie and I have been talking probably for several years now about our Jacobs. We both have a Jacob. And we'll share a little bit about that during this meeting. And one of the things that we've talked about over the years is the particular struggles of our own boys and how we were able to meet their needs through the program, through the curriculum, through the community that CC has provided. Over the years, I've often heard from parents, CC is great, but it's not a good fit for my kid because of X, Y, and Z. And so I want to start creating some dialogue about how to tailor what CC offers to meet the specific needs of your children so that your child can be successful in the work that they do. So again, we're going to lay the groundwork for that. Let me just do quick introductions. I'm Amy Derrickson. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 27 years old. My youngest is 18. He just graduated out of Challenge 4 this last year, and I am officially a retired homeschooling mom. My kids still need me, and I am grateful for that. So, there's always something going on, but my years as a homeschooling mom, they've come to an end. And now I just developed the Lord has developed in me, I would say, really a passion and a desire for encouraging other homeschool moms.
Mm.
It's been, my oldest is my Jacob. He is 27 years old. He is not a neurotypical person, and so that has created some dynamics and some challenges for both himself and for me in parenting him, in homeschooling him, and so anyway, a little bit about me. I've been homeschooling since he was 5 years old and homeschooled all 4 of my kids all the way through. I am now an area representative over the Northern Virginia South area, which includes everything from just outside of DC all the way west to past the Warrenton area, south, and then includes all of Fredericksburg. So that area is the area that I support. If you're in a community there, I look forward to getting to know you. And I'm happy to be here. Marie, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, hello. My name's Marie Pinney. I have been homeschooling with Classical Conversations for 20 years this year. Um, when God called my family to homeschool, I had 3 little children at home, and we have 4 children now. My children are my oldest son is 24. I have a 21-year-old son, and that is my Jacob, which you'll hear more about as we talk today. I have a daughter who's 19 and a son who is 17, and he is currently in Challenge 3. During my CC experience, I've been started out in Alexandria campus. I'd spent most of my time at Centerville, and now my son Joshua is at the Bristow campus at Challenge 3 there. And I've also had the privilege of being a Challenge B director for a few years at Centerville. So really got to dig into that side of it too. And I tutored many, many years when my children were in foundation. So have a lot of experience on lots of levels with Classical Conversations. But let's see. Is there anything else I need to anything?
Why don't, no, I appreciate that. That's perfect. Why don't you tell me a little bit about um, why, what brought you to homeschooling in general? And then specifically, what drew you to homeschooling with CC?
Oh, sure. Okay. So, well, when my oldest son was 2 years old, I was attending Truro Anglican Church in Fairfax, and they have a preschool program there. And I was in a MOPS program at my church, and everyone was putting their kids in preschool. And I thought, well, that's what I'll do. I'll put my kids in preschool. And the day before registration opened, I just had this sick feeling in my stomach. And I just did not have a peace about it, but I was very frustrated by this because I knew that this was coming from God, and I didn't want him to tell me not to put my kid in preschool. And so had a very, very sleepless night that night. And finally, in the morning, I submitted to the Lord, and it's about homeschooling my son for preschool. And when I did, there was just this peace that flooded my heart. All like I just knew that that's what God wanted and I needed to obey, even though I didn't, I wanted to do what all my friends were doing. So that really started my journey of obedience to Christ in homeschooling. Um, but as he got closer to kindergarten and I leaned into this. I just knew 100. It was like it was a calling from God that He gave to me and my husband that we needed to homeschool, and um, I started to look into what that would mean, and I attended a Heave convention. Had no idea. I'd never heard of classical conversations, but a woman in my mom's neighborhood in Vienna had gone to a CC info meeting, and she had older kids. And she called me up as soon as she left that meeting and said, Marie, I've learned about this new program. I wish that I had known about it when my kids were younger. I would have started it right away. There is one spot left in the Abecedarians campus in Alexandria, and I believe God's holding it for your son, David. So I said, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I registered my son in this program I knew nothing about, not a single bit, just on Patty's recommendation that this was a great program. So that's how I started with CC, with knowing absolutely nothing about it.
Mhm.
But I do believe that God led Patty to, I'm 100% certain that God gave Patty that wisdom for me. And anyway, so started there and just realized this was an amazing, it was the vision for what CC would do with my children and with our program, our homeschool program at home, that this was something that I could use for our entire homeschooling
It would
career.
meet the needs of all of
Yes.
the kids.
Yes, absolutely. And so at that point, Lee Borton's was going around giving talks in our area. And I went to one of her, I went to one, and that was really the first time I'd ever heard about, or really heard the vision for what this program would do. And she said something really that has stuck with me the whole time. She said, whenever you're evaluating a program, look at the end. Start at the
Mm,
end
right.
and go backwards, evaluating a curriculum, whatever it is, see where they're taking you. And so I really did look at the challenge programs right away from the time my son was, 6 years old, I would say, was when I started to look at the challenge programs. And I was in awe of what my children would eventually learn and what the goal was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And so I, similarly to you, I had actually already enrolled my Jacob in preschool, and the Lord just continued to put this concept of homeschooling in front of me. And so there was some transition period, when he was 5, pulled him out of the preschool he was in and just decided we're going to do it. I did not come across CC until several years later, when we moved back to the Virginia area. And I didn't, so again, like you though, I did not know anything about it. I had absolutely zero understanding of the classical model of education or what that meant. But I knew when I was in community that it was meeting the needs of my kids.
Right.
And it was, my kids at the time, my older, were just in foundations and essentials, and I just liked what we saw. We didn't have a challenge program, so I didn't have that vision. I didn't have the end goal, but God is just merciful um, in your ignorance too.
Yeah.
So tell me, Marie, what are some of the earliest or the early challenges that you encountered with
Mm.
either homeschooling or with CC now? And maybe you need to tell us a little bit more about Jacob at this point
Okay,
to share
sure.
that.
Okay, so let me start with my oldest son really quick, just to compare. Um,
Mhm.
as many of you who are listening know, um, no child is exactly alike. But it sure would be nice if they were in some ways when it comes to homeschool, because I picked out curriculum and I thought, boy, I'm going to invest all this money and it's going to work so well for all of my children. Well, this is me, my first child. So David is a voracious reader. Always has been. I think he started to read at 4 years old. I picked up Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. We did the 100 easy lessons. They were easy. He learned to read. We would go to the library. He would check out books. He would fall asleep. I'd have to go into his room at night and say, "Shut that book. You need to go to bed." I thought, goodness, how easy this is to teach reading. And I would go to the curriculum fairs and I would pass the curriculum that cost $500. And I would think, goodness, learning to read is easy. Why do people need this $500 curriculum? Anyway, so um, his brother Jacob is about 3 years younger. And so I think I'm just going to go this same route. We're going to start Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And we would read, and he would sit there and he would get to cat. And the next day, he'd have to read cat again, cat. Mm. And he would never remember it. And then he'd get all squirrely on the couch and upset that I'm sitting there with him, making him do this thing. And it was tears and frustration. And we did not get through 100 easy lessons. Let me just say, they were
It
not
wasn't
easy.
easy.
No, they were not easy at all. And I started to realize that, well, first I thought this kid was just disobedient. I thought that I was a bad teacher and he was a bad, well, just a disobedient son. And we had lots and lots of battles together. And so that started around 5. And then I forget even who, I mentioned to somebody by the time he was 7, all the struggles we were having at home. And someone suggested to me, have you considered that he might have dyslexia? And I was like, no, I have not. And so that put a thought in my mind that, we need to figure this out. And we did end up taking him. I took him to Dr. Verdilli in Leesburg and had him evaluated. Sure enough, that boy was word blind, like one of the um, toughest forms of dyslexia. For him, every single letter really is a new word. And so when I got that diagnosis, I just cried because not that he was dyslexic, but that he was not a disobedient boy, and I was not a bad teacher. It just turns out that he had some significant learning challenges. And then all the guilt came in for the several years of me disciplining him for being disobedient. And so, um, it was that was hard, but that time period was so good for me learning about my son and revamping. I had to revamp all my expectations really for my homeschool. But that's where CC comes in. And I can talk about that. We can talk about that as we go on. But it ended up being such a blessing for my dyslexic son once I wrapped my head around how do I use this program and emphasize the skills that Jacob has that are different. They're different than other kids, but he still has amazing skills that can be harnessed using the CC program.
Yes, and I want to touch on that in just a bit, but come back though. So you're a young mom. You have just discovered that your son is severely dyslexic. You've got three other
Oh,
kids.
yes.
You've got an older child and
Wow. Yes.
two youngers. How do you handle this? How are you handling the stress of you just being that young homeschooling mom in the trenches?
Yeah. Well, I will say that that was for sure one of the most challenging periods in my life. So, I guess my first, lots of prayer, like just really lots of prayer and seeking the Lord um, every day. And I did a lot of reaching out for help. Um, it was very important to me to find mentors in my life. And when I prayed and asked for the Lord to bring these people to me, He provided abundantly. And so that is huge. I also had to stop the comparison game.
Mm,
I had to realize that I have a very unique family, um, and a unique son that God gave specifically to me, and nobody else's homeschool was going to look like mine. And so I had to give up those expectations of, um, I don't know if expectations is the right word, but just the image I had in my head of what this pretty little homeschool was going to look like this background behind me that's not real.
it's just hiding the realness that's back there. No. Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback off of that. So, 27 years as a parent, 23 years as a homeschooling parent, I I know for myself, and I often see it in other moms, we think that everybody else has it figured out. We think that everybody else's kids are able to do XYZ and we're homeschooling, we're producing these prodigy children, right? So it must just be mine that are struggling. And because it's just mine that are struggling, I don't see that struggle anywhere else, then the problem must be in me and how I'm parenting or how I'm homeschooling. And so I think that, that shame starts to set in. And our tendency then is, Satan just uses that. He uses it to isolate us. So our tendency then is to hide that, um, and to allow that shame to separate us from fellowship. And so that's one of the things, and this is another reason that I just wanted to do this over the years. Probably more specifically the last 10 years as my Jacob was in high school and the struggles just became all the more critical at that time. The Lord really convicted me about hiding our situation and hiding our struggles. And now there's this balance, you want to have respect for your child and respect for their privacy, but then at the same time, I want to be transparent with people that our life is not picture perfect. Our family is not picture perfect. My homeschooling, it is not. And just to be transparent um, and to allow other people to see the reality and give other people, that vulnerability requires reciprocity, right? To give other people the encouragement and the freedom that they may need to express their own struggles and to be willing to share that and to seek help. So I didn't want to get off on a tangent, but I did want to really focus on that concept of not allowing the shame, the frustration, the fear to isolate us as homeschooling parents. It's a real issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what did you learn about Jacob through this process then?
Okay, so the interesting thing about his testing with Dr. Verdilli that was super helpful for me to understand is Jacob ended up he is what they call twice exceptional. So he had very, very strong visual perceptive skills and auditory skills. So when you see these types of tests, there's two bars, and in between the bars is everything that's average. So just kind of your normal kid. So, and then there's dots that go above or below the bars, and that the dots above the bars are the exceptional part. The dots below are the struggles and the weaknesses. Jacob had like one thing on the average bar.
Mm.
So, he is not an average person in any, by any definition. So, twice exceptional would be he's got some things where he's genius level, and then he's got some things like the reading and the writing, being able to perceive words that are just, he was just scored so, so low on that. So, Jacob is still, to this day, a man of strong emotions, young man full of life, but also just wow, he could swing into so many extremes. When he's happy, he's happy. When he's angry, he's very angry. And so this twice exceptional bit really, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's not a shocker. That sounds, this explains why he is this way. He's got, um, so I guess, so what I had to do was learn how to harness those strengths to balance out the weaknesses. So, um, learning how to, so allowing him to use audiobooks was huge. Once we switched to that, he was able to learn and to follow along, especially as we got into challenge A and four, with all the novels, and there's a lot of he could read everything using ear reading, and he understood. He's very intelligent. He just needed that form of getting the information into his head to be able to participate. So audiobooks were key for him. um, let's see, but just learning, and also whew, learning how, let me go back to just dealing with him, disciplining him. I was not not the best at that. He would pull me into his emotional struggles, and it wasn't until fairly recently that I was able, the Lord convicted me that I needed to not be dragged into those. So responding to him with not ratcheting my response up to his response. I wish if I could go back to my younger self, I would do a lot more of controlling my own emotions with his strong emotions so that he can learn those skills in how to pull some of his emotions, or how to harness that for him. I wish that I'd spent more time helping him learn that, but I didn't learn that about him. I didn't quite understand that about him till much later. So that's one regret I have, that I would try and go back and do better, is helping him learn how to control those big emotions that he has rather than reacting to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my Jacob is not dyslexic, but he's, like I said, he is not neurotypical. Absolutely a twice exceptional
Hmm.
student as well, person, individual as well. He is just genius in certain areas. I'm blown away by gifts that he has. And yet, for us, some of those academic things, like for you, you said your Jacob was word blind. My Jacob was completely number blind.
Wow.
Math every single day was like Groundhog Day.
Yes.
He and I
Yes.
did math together every day until he graduated. And, we would sit down and we would go through a concept. And at the end of our time in math, he would be working through it. And the next day we would pull it back out. And it was like he had never seen it before. Now, my Jacob, though, a little bit differently than yours, he absolutely. Very emotional, very sensitive, but
Yeah.
absolutely a pleaser when it came to wanting his mom to be happy. It would break his heart if I was unhappy with something. It's actually going to make me cry. And so this, you're dealing with these frustrations, um, and the impact then that had on him. So And I remember at one point he said to me, "Mom, if you think you're frustrated because I can't remember this, how do you think I feel?"
Yes.
Well, good grief, I can't even imagine. Um, and so he very much internalized the frustration that I would exhibit in teaching him. And although I never ever said anything to him um, indicating that I thought he was lazy, he internalized.
Yes.
He absolutely uh, characterized himself as lazy. And that's something, again, if I could go back and to my younger self, knowing what I know now, what I would do differently, that is something that I would have been proactive about from the beginning.
Yes.
And just speaking life-giving words over him to take away uh,
Yes.
that burden that he's carried. Um, but jumping back to you then, without getting so much into the details of accommodating for the dyslexia, because we're going to meet again and we're going to talk all about dyslexia. It's going to be very specific for that. But generally, how did you accommodate Jacob's dyslexia, his learning challenges, generally at home and particularly in CC?
Okay. Let me start with his dyslexia was beyond the point of me being able to fix it at home.
Okay.
So Dr. Verdilli recommended that we work with a discovery therapist or get a tutor, which I don't want to go into right now. But I don't think I could have done this without her. So partnering with, and it ended up, wow, costing a lot of money. But let me just tell you, God provided. We never, we couldn't really say, we didn't have a lot of money in the savings account, but somehow God provided every time anyway, I want to throw that out there that even though it seemed daunting to take on this therapy for him, um, financially, God did provide. So I want to throw that out there. Um, and then so I partnered with a therapist who is a dear friend to this day, and she absolutely adores Jacob. And Jacob, I think, considers her one of his dearest mentors. So that gave him um, a lifelong relationship. So that's good. So partnering with that, and then so the next question, I'm sorry, after that was, what do I
Um,
do? What do we do at
so
home?
just accommodating for his
Yes.
challenges
Accommodating for his
and at
challenges.
CC.
Yes. Okay. So foundations. Let's start with foundations because he was about 8 years old when when we realized what was going on. And so he, the song like the great thing about foundations is it there's not a lot of reading that's required, and so I don't feel that he felt very different in foundations because we would just do the memory work at home, which had a lot of verb audio cues, which were perfect for him. And his older brother had done memory master, and he came to my husband and I and said, I want to do memory master. Jacob did. And I was like, oh no. But
That was a welcome announcement for you, Mom.
because I knew the heavy lifting that it would take to get him there. So with the partnership of our amazing tutors at Centerville, who knew that this was going to be a daunting task for Jacob, we went ahead. And the first year, he did not make it all the way, but he tried. And the effort that he put in, I was so proud of him. And just in that process, he gained of trying to do Memory Master. Um, what I did with that is we celebrated every subject that he became Memory Master in. It was really the history and sentences, if I remember right, and the timeline that got him. All the extra words in there were tricky for him, but he did everything else the first year. And then the second year that he tried, um, And I love that he wasn't discouraged, that he was willing to
That
try
was the
again.
question I had. So how did that feel like failure to him? How did he handle
Because
that?
I didn't set it up as failure to start with. I didn't set it up as you only succeed if you get everything. I set it
Fair.
up as you succeed in, let's try and get as many subjects as you can succeed in done. And whatever you can do, we celebrated that. And so it was sad for me that he couldn't be celebrated in the community as being a memory master, because I know he probably put in at least double, if not more, than a work than what most of the other, not most, but like typical children would do to become memory master. But um, for what he did do, I think I took him out for ice cream. We rewarded his efforts at home for sure. So, made him feel celebrated. But then the next year, so this is where the tutors came in. We had one tutor in particular because he needed more time to let his brain get the words out. Like especially the timeline, it was in there. He just, like with neurotypical children, you're supposed to say the timeline very quickly. But
Right.
for Jacob, with his special needs, he just really needed to marinate. So he had one of our directors let him jump on a trampoline while he did his memory master stuff. And that was key for him, being able to move around and get that. Anyway, when he was able to do so he did make it that year. It took him like several hours, probably double the amount of time it took for other students to get through the memory master stuff. But I don't want to stick on memory master because that's not the only thing about CC. But I'm just saying, movement for him is key. But the fact that he challenged himself to do that and he wanted to do it was amazing to me. And I'd say so that was his final year, I think,
Let
in
me let
in
me ask you
foundation.
really quickly about foundations. Were there conversations that you had with his tutors or with the director that that were pivotal for his success in
Oh
foundation?
yeah. Oh yes. We thankfully, I mean, Jacob was not the only dyslexic student in our campus, and there were a lot of students with special needs, and the director was amazingly accommodating of those types of kids. And we taught, and I would say my foundation's community was the other moms there were huge help in that connection that I needed to say, I'm struggling with this. And then people would come to me and say, I'm struggling with this. What are you doing with Jacob at home? And we would also, I mean, some of the struggles that we had were other family members, like grandparents and even husbands who didn't quite get that these kids learn differently. And then would question, you're doing this accommodation stuff at home. Isn't that making them
Given
um, just giving into their laziness or whatever? So these words that you've spoke about, these aren't just coming from inside the kids too. It's coming from outside and outside influences as well. And it can also be those types of questioning of us as teachers at home, um, whether they're coming from our husband or grandparents or whatever, other people who have kids and other teachers, maybe from public schools or private schools. There's a lot of words that people speak to you to make you question, would make me question whether or not I was doing what I was doing with Jacob was right. But his therapist, that's where his therapist came in. Like I would run things by her. I'm doing this, and she'd be like, "That's exactly what you need to do." And having that expert for this particular, I mean, dyslexia is really a brain. It's just the
yes.
the way the brain processes information um, was helpful for her. And she would give me books to read, which then I would recommend to other moms in the community as well. So I maybe got off track a little bit, but that's um, learning how to balance the outside influence as his main teacher. I found that to be tricky, but I had to be firm in knowing that I was on the, I had to just really plow forward with the
Mhm.
information that I had.
And
And
really advocate for.
yes, advocate for him. Yes. And the director and the tutors were so easy to advocate. Like they were so accommodating and willing to work. They didn't have to do much to accommodate him except for in foundations
And
specifically,
foundation.
except for with Memory Master stuff because foundations is already set up for all
Sure.
sorts of learning styles.
Now, what about essentials? Now we're getting into a little
Yes.
nitty-gritty with academics and reading
Yes.
and writing.
Right.
How did you, again, it's kind of broad because we're going to get into specifics with dyslexia next time, but how did you and partnership with the Essentials tutor accommodate for Jacob in Essentials?
Right. So, I would say that learning the grammar, first off, we took those. There was actually one of our essentials director, she was able to, she did it in class. She had this big blown up poster that the kids would use to go write
For the
their
chart?
sentences on. What's that? To
For charts?
diagram. Yeah, the
Oh,
charts
okay.
to break it, I forget. It's been so long since I've been in essentials. I forget what
I know. I'm trying
that
to,
one
it's
is called.
something task, sentence.
Yes, the task chart.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got a big blown up task chart and he would stand. I put it on the wall and he didn't have to sit to do this. He would stand, we would write the basic sentence on, but that was so good for his dyslexia to be able to break these sentences apart, to find the subject and the verb. And that helped so much with the with his writing and to be able to analyze the where is the main clause. All these things were excellent for him. And I just wouldn't focus on getting through every single task chart. We would have to, that's where the accommodations were made. I wanted him to know the very basics of these sentences. So that's where we focused on grammar. And then IEW was so perfect for him because he loved to draw pictures. So,
Okay.
and that helped him. But sometimes that he would focus too much on that. So I ended up getting these colored pencils that were different colored, and we would we would use those to also help him visually. Um, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but he was able to visually see his keyword outline better because of the colors we chose. And then we would sit down at the computer and he would have his little keyword outline and I would type for him what he said to me and get that basic paragraph in. And then I'd ask him to sit at the computer and read what he dictated to me. And we would go through that process. And it ended up getting to be where it wasn't super long. And we actually had a lot of fun together. Like we
Bonding
made it,
time.
yeah, it was bonding time. We made it enjoyable together. And the IEW curriculum in itself is rather interesting. Like and then Faces of History, he loved the dress up part and he loved picking the character. He loved the um, writing how to guess who I am type stuff. So that ended up being a very positive experience, but also there again, the um the essentials tutors were always very accommodating to if if I needed to shorten if an assignment for him, that was okay. I just was in and this goes with the challenge directors too. Um, just being in constant communication of here's what we did this week and here's the accommodations I made. Because with CC, you're the teacher. And
Right.
that's what I love about CC is my Jacob needed me to be his advocate, but also more than that, because I'm his main teacher, I don't just have to um, give off that role to somebody else and hope they do it right.
Right. And I'll say too, from the perspective of being an essentials tutor for a few years, from the perspective of being a challenge director for a few years, having that communication from the parent prior to CC day, this is what we were able to do. This is what's going on. That was so helpful for me in the classroom because I never wanted to feel like I was putting a student um, on the spot for
Right.
for something that was out of their control, for something that was going to embarrass them. I wanted that to be fruitful and productive time, not a time of embarrassment. So to have that dialogue, that constant communication with the parent from that perspective, from the tutor perspective, that's just invaluable in making sure that that student can be successful. Again, it comes down to helping them be successful in the work they do.
Yes. Yes, and it's so important
Fewer
because the
than assignments in the guide. It's not about the checklist.
right.
It's
Right.
about the skills and the work that they
Correct.
do.
Yes. So with my oldest son, can we move on to challenge? Is that
Oh
okay?
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about challenge now.
Okay.
And you go. I'll insert questions.
That's okay. Well, I was just gonna, I was piggybacking on what you just said. So getting up to the challenge guide, wow. With my oldest son, I thought, well, this is the curriculum and we're gonna do it just like it's laid out. Like I could not understand why anyone would write a curriculum that we're not supposed to use all of or do everything exactly the way it was written. That for my oldest son, it just didn't, I didn't quite get the tailor that I could tailor. I had permission to tailor something.
Or that you
Um,
were encouraged, that you were expected
right,
to take
exactly.
it for your.
Um, I thought for him to be successful meant we get through this challenge guide the way it is written. Um, but clearly when it got anyway, that ended up not being good even for my oldest son. But I don't want to go into that at this moment. I really had to learn. This is me learning about myself. First time homeschool mom, having to realize that it is okay to to cut back and to how do I say this? Sometimes you need to put your family first before getting checking the box for everything, and
Oh, I
that's what.
would say that's all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. But you have to realize when to. I guess what it's important to realize when to do that. And I wasn't good at that with my first son, so I had all this pressure, and I felt so guilty that we weren't doing everything the way it was supposed to be done. Okay, so then Jacob comes up into the challenge mix, and I quickly realized that this at this point I had been humbled enough to know that it was okay. I wasn't somehow a bad homeschool mom if I took this curriculum and made it exactly what Jacob needed it to be. And so Challenge A was so fabulous for Jacob because it has the drawing of the animals, which he was so good at drawing and labeling and all that. So, and he was able to do all of the um, novels via audio. And then the geography, he loved the geography. So challenge A really wasn't much of a challenge for him. Like he went into that. That was a very strong year for him. Um, so then fast forwarding challenge B, the first semester was okay. Um, Mock trial was really, really tricky for him. But I was so proud of, how do I say this? He did so well. He took it on, but I had to work with him, Amy. And well, and this is, I guess I should say, when we tackled challenge, he wasn't the kid who was going to do this on his own.
Sure.
So I would write up assignment sheets for him that were different than the guide because he needed to see specific. They had check boxes for what he was supposed to do. So I had to invest every week. I had to invest more time than probably what most parents had to invest in to be able to write, this is what I expect for you to do, Jacob. Does hopefully that makes sense.
Yep.
But
Yeah. So a lot of, right, because a lot of times, we go into the challenge levels and, the theme of challenge A is that discipline builds ownership, and we and other homeschooling parents feel like once their kids get into challenge, that they should be working independently.
right.
Um, well, a couple things, again, if CC, the parent is the teacher, and every child needs a teacher. The tutor is
Correct.
their teacher. There's just not adequate time one day a week during that, 55 minutes per strand to teach the things. Every child needs a teacher. Um, but secondly, yes, all of our kids are different. My Jacob could not work independently well, through anything technical throughout his whole
Right.
education. But even even the things that he's gifted in, the literature and the composition and those areas, he still needed me well into middle school and even partially into high school to help him structure his day, help him to get that framework
Yes.
that he needed to get things done
Yeah.
and to
Can
accomplish.
I piggyback on there really quick about getting things done? Um, there's uh, this method, it's called understanding the brain with a funnel, that the brain can only take in information till that funnel gets full. And after that, there's no more information that it can absorb. And for a kid like Jacob, that funnel fills up faster than other kids. And
Because they
so,
can't filter out all of the extraneous information. There, I
right,
think for my Jacob, there's no filtering of other things. It's all there,
yes,
and he can't sort through it, and he can't sort it and find that next thing that's important.
right.
So that's
Right.
we try to
So
document.
making things more focused for him, this is exactly what you need to be working on. Help was helpful, and also doing it in short bursts. So while some kids can just sit there and focus for an hour, and then another hour, and then another hour, you hear this in, your history strand is supposed to be 1 hour long every day. Your Latin strand is supposed to be 1 hour long every day. And that works for some kids. Some kids can do that. I'm telling Jacob will never be able to do every strand for an hour long every day. And so I really had to take it seriously that this kid is going to fold if I force this upon him. So he needed to work in shorter bursts, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, or 20 minutes on, go play Legos for an hour, listen to your audiobook while you're playing Legos. And then I would work with the younger children. I would do some focused work with Jacob in the morning. Then I would send him off to get his brain to clear up a little bit, so his funnel can accept more things. And I would work with the younger kids. And so I was pulling Jacob in. Jacob had several sessions to work with mom throughout the day. His school day didn't look like everyone else's, if that makes sense. I had to
It makes
structure his day so his brain could absorb the information at different periods of time.
right. So Marie, one last before we come into our wrap up, one last question for you. At one point, you through because of dynamics in the CC community, you didn't have access to the level that Jacob needed, and
Correct.
so you enrolled him in another homeschool program.
I
Can
did.
you tell me about that, and can you tell me what you discovered through that?
Sure. So yeah, that would have been Jacob's 10th grade year. So he should have gone into Challenge 2, but that program didn't end up running at our campus. So at the last minute, so this was like August, I had to just pivot and find another program. So I did. And he ended up taking the majority of his subjects there. But wow, I it it didn't really occur to me until I had to pivot to this other program how all the strands in challenge are tied together, and
You're
it is
integrated.
this holistic program. Whereas at this other program, the teachers didn't communicate with one another. They every box, it's just this, every piece was a different box, and every piece of the program, there was no integration. And also, because I wasn't the main teacher, there was a lot of Jacob had a lot of frustration with certain teachers and their expectations that he just didn't quite understand. There wasn't quite the ability for accommodation in the same way. He had some teachers who were good at at accommodating, but definitely not all. And so he definitely started to have those inner words of "I'm stupid,"
Yeah.
creeping in. And he's definitely not stupid. He just doesn't learn the same way as other kids. So putting him in this other program, in comparison to CC, I just couldn't wait to get back into CC for him because that it worked so. He had figured out how the rhythm of how CC's program worked, and it worked for him. And the encouragement from the directors, they were always so encouraging to him. And yeah, I could say more, but I know we're running short on time.
No, that's okay. So your biggest, I guess the biggest takeaway, what was the benefit for your son with dyslexia of the CC program? What did he as an individual gain through a
Sure.
classical model of education with CC?
Sure. I think it taught him how to ask really good questions.
Mm.
Um, I will say it gave Jacob and we have an amazing relationship to this day. Like he knows that I am his biggest advocate. He knows, I will start with that as number one, that I have this amazing relationship with my dyslexic son. And he respects me and I respect him for what he can do. And so I just love that we have a great relationship together.
Because
So
you were
that's
always
that's
his teacher,
what's
right?
that?
Because you were always his teacher. You were always the one
Right.
um, that was there with him
Yeah.
day after day, working through the details.
Yeah, but I think he knows, eh, how do I would I spoke encouraging words into him, and he knows that I love him no matter what. And so, and I truly, I am truly impressed with his giftings, and I think other teachers don't know how to do that. So the classical conversation program gave me the ability to create a structured program at home that lifted up his strengths, focused on his strengths more than his weaknesses. And like Dr. Verdilli told me this, there's no school in the world that's going to do that except your homeschool, which I thought was amazing. That I thought the doctor was going to tell me something else, but anyway, that I
Yeah,
needed to put him in school, but he did not, and he was absolutely right. But classical conversations, because I'm the teacher, gave me the ability to do that for him. Secondly, it taught him how to ask and answer really, really good questions, and it gives skills for how to learn. And so even though he's not the best reader and he's not the best writer, using IEW and then Lost Tools of Writing, all those things gave him a very structured way to learn how to compose at least a readable and organized paragraph. So he's not going to be a journalist or writing books or anything, but in life you need those skills. And so,
communication is so
yes.
important. And
Oh
so
my goodness.
that framework,
Public speaking skills. Wow. There's no program like CC, honestly, he is so confident to get up and speak in front of people. And
right?
his leadership skills in being able to. So he's going into the trades. He's currently at Liberty University, um, at their trade school. They purchased a trade school and he's doing their technical studies program, getting certified in welding. And he's excelling in that. And I think it just helped him to learn more about himself. Um,
Right,
and
right.
I will tell you, the directors were so encouraging to him. Like he was able to dialogue in class, no problem at all. He would turn in all his assignments. He was able to do debate. I'm telling you what, I had to work really hard with him on all of that too. But those debate skills, learning how to analyze arguments, he got an excellent education. I think way better than what he could have gotten anywhere else um, with the struggles that he has had. But to be able to do this and be still come out a whole, confident human being without his soul crushed from not being able to do things like the regular classroom wanted him to do. He's a confident. He just yeah, his soul is intact. I'll just put it that way.
I love that. And I love how you've worded it, that his soul's intact, he hasn't been crushed. One of the things that I love about CC that I've, tried to communicate with people that are unfamiliar, um, it through the classical model of education and through the development of the skills of learning, it gives our kids a voice.
Yeah, it does.
It helps them assimilate information, process information, and then organize that information and then put their words onto it in
Sure.
order for them to present themselves and give them a voice. No matter, whether it's the trades, whether it's um, being an attorney, no matter what trajectory they go on, that is just a life skill that's invaluable. We are at noon now, and so I want to wrap this up. Um, Marie, so many of our conversations that we've had, they come back to what we would do differently if we could go back and talk to our younger selves. And so that's what I want to just touch on for a couple minutes. But before we get into that, I do, we have acknowledged over and over, that the Lord is sovereign.
Amen.
The things he made our Jacobs exactly the way they are.
Yeah.
He put them in our family for a purpose. One of the things, and I just touch on this super briefly. My Jacob has had so many struggles over the years. And there was a day, it was after he had graduated, but I was just trying to, I was listening to him and trying to speak into his heart and, just wanted to convey to him, buddy, the the Lord sees you and he loves you. He created you exactly the way you are. And my son, I will never forget his response. He's like, Mom, I know God sees me and I know he loves me. And I know that because he put me in
Oh,
family with you.
oh,
Because had I been put in any other family and a different decision have been made for my education, for my life, he told me, he said, I wouldn't be here today. So that's, we don't see, we often can't see the trees for the forest, but we certainly can't see the end goal. The Lord does, and he is sovereign and he is faithful and he is merciful. Psalms 103 verse 14, he knows our frame and he remembers that we're dust. He knows that. But then the other side of that, just the bookend to that though, is 2 Corinthians 12:9. But his grace is sufficient. His
mhm,
grace is sufficient, and his power is what's made perfect through our weakness. And so just that resting on him. So what are just a couple of, if I could go back and tell this to my younger self,
mm.
this is what my message would be.
I would tell myself every moment that you spent sacrificing of yourself, of your sleep, of your creativity, of every that it was worth it. Because all when we give up of ourselves out of love, that is how do I say it that is God working through us. Our um Christ these are that's the sacrifice that I do for my son or my children. All of us, all of us moms here, we all sacrifice for our children, and that is a life-giving love that we have, and it is hard and it makes us weak and tired, and but God sees it and he rewards it. And even when you don't see the fruits of it at the time, when you are sacrificing and you think I can't give another inch of myself, and yet you do, that's when God gives us this hope to continue. And that's what I want to leave all of you moms who are joining us with is I want you to have so much hope in the sacrifice and love that you are pouring into your homeschool, that God sees it. God knows all of your trials, and He is walking with you, and He is giving you everything you need for your precious family. And so there were days when I just felt like I would see that yellow school bus come by in front of my house, and I thought, of all my kids, I wish I could just put Jacob on that bus and send him away. But here I am because he was hard and he was not grateful when he was younger. He's grateful now, but when he was younger, he was not grateful for the sacrifices that mom was making for him. Yeah. Um, so I would just, if I could go back, I would um, give myself, I would use the word hope. I would cling to that word more. That there is so much good that God will bring through these sacrifices.
And what you said, it reminds me of I get before getting on here, um, the phrase that the Lord just kept bringing back to my mind this morning, preparing, is from First Thessalonians 5, verse 24. He who calls you is faithful. He will
Mm.
surely do it. He did. He called us to be mothers. He called us to be mothers of the particular child that he gave us. He called us to this life of homeschooling, and it's hard work. It's momming on steroids. And so, but yet he is faithful, even when we're not, he is faithful. Um, and so yes, I just continuing on. There was a point like you. Now, my son was always grateful, but there was a point in time when I felt, and dynamics were tough. My husband was deployed for a year. We were living with his grandparents and taking care of them. And I had my own four kids that I was homeschooling, and homeschooling Jacob every day. This was middle school at the time. Every day, I I felt like I was beating my head against this
Yes.
wall, and this brick wall is not moving. And I was in
Yes.
tears.
Yep.
And I came to a point when I thought, okay, maybe the Lord is calling me out of this. And I
Yeah.
was heartbroken over it. And for the first time ever, my husband always called me, which was, I think, my mornings, his evenings. And for the first time ever, I called him when he was in Afghanistan. I never did that. And I was heartbroken. And I, through tears, told him, I think the Lord is calling me out of homeschooling. And I cannot imagine this. And so my husband said that, perhaps, but let's pray about it and let's don't expect, I remember, don't expect a quick answer. Don't expect something overnight. But God, so good, so good. The very next day, I open up my email and before everybody is awake, and there's this devotional from the old schoolhouse magazine, right? The old
I
schoolhouse.
love that one. Yes.
And there was this article in there, and it was me, and it was, I don't remember now exactly what the title was, but it was Mama, Are You Ready to Give Up? And it literally
Mm.
told me about my life and all of the things. But the point of that encouraging article was it brought us to the story of Peter. And Peter had been out fishing all night and had caught nothing. And he'd already reeled in his nets and he was already mending them. And the Lord appears and he tells him, throw your nets out to the other side. And Peter's like, but Lord, we were out here all night and there's nothing, but because you tell me, I'll do it. And so that's where I got to. So, and that was my answer. The
Yeah.
Lord called me to this, and it
Yes.
is not easy, but because you tell me to do this, I'll do it. And so we did continue homeschooling all the way through high school, and it was not easy. But I am so grateful. I am so grateful for every single one of those days with my son,
Yeah.
the hard ones, even, every day in math. That's special time that we look back on. We had that together. So anyway, yes, again, I didn't mean to hijack that from you, but some of the things for me, um, humbling myself
Yeah.
and repenting. We talked about it before, repenting of the sin of comparison, comparing our homeschools with others, comparing our families with others, comparing our children with others, and the guilt that's associated with that. That's not of the Lord.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Satan just loves to cast those doubts. And so repenting of that.
And
And
fear. I think another one is fear. Fear of, oh, was my son's never going to succeed. My fear of, there's lots of fears. We could go on and on. But
right,
casting those fears to the Lord and not allowing that anxiety to take over. And yeah,
yeah,
definitely letting go of those things.
right, right. You also mentioned, you were determined that you were going to be the expert in your child
Yes,
and the work that
absolutely.
it took
It
for you
took
to,
so much work. But you know what? I'm telling you what, God is using it now. I am able to speak into the lives of so many other families too, because not because I'm some great person or anything like that. It's just I have experienced that, and so I'm able to share this experience with other people and hopefully help them along on their journey, which is what I'm trying to do today too. And I find that such a blessing. Like I know that God wants us to do this for one another. People helped me. There were so many people. I mentioned that at the beginning. So many people came alongside me and spoke into my life when I was at my wits' end with him and my other children too. I have other children who are not perfect. But God has given me graciously, abundantly when I needed help, and sometimes came from very unexpected places. But um, we need to hold in faith, like just keep plodding along in faith that we are living out the calling that God has given us with these kiddos, even when it's hard. And
amen.
especially with those little bitties at home when you're just life just seems like it's so just exhausting.
Right, right. And the Lord uses all, He's using all of this, not only in the life of our children, but especially in our lives. I think I probably learned so much more over the years than even my son did through the process of teaching him. I have a couple of verses here that I just want to share as we close. Romans 5, verses 3 through 5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and
Mm.
endurance produces character, and character produces
Oh,
hope. And hope does not put us to shame,
it does
because
not.
God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us.
That
Uh,
is such a great verse for all of our homeschoolers. We got to have that hope. It just carries us along.
it's rooted in Him, and just
Yeah.
acknowledging that no, we're not going to be faithful, we're not going to be perfect, we're not going to do it all right, but
Mm.
He is faithful,
Yeah.
and so our hope is in Him.
Yeah. I love
Um,
that God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. And we all want that Holy Spirit poured into our homeschool. That
yeah,
love that's we want that love to come out of us and poured into our children. And that comes from that hope we have in Christ.
right.
And
Kimberly, that was Romans 5, verses 3 through 5 that I read. So, um, Marie, do you have any last words? Do you want to open it up for a few minutes of
I
Q&A?
have time for Q&A if anybody wants to do that.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Thank you for everybody being on here. Let me stop recording.